Hey everybody, Wayne here. In today's Let's Play, I'm doing a playthrough of Korea, the Mobile War, 1950 to 51, designed by Joseph Miranda and published by Decision Games in Strategy and Tactics Magazine, number 349. This game focuses on that first year of the Korean War, when it was a war of maneuver and of surprises and of changing front lines, as opposed to the last couple years of the war, where it was really largely static along the 38th parallel. I'm going to go ahead and explain kind of the game, how the game works, do an overview of it, and then we'll dive into the playthrough. So let's go down to the table. All right, so I have the map set up here. Let's do a quick broad overview of the entire map and the play area. So Korea the Mobile War is a solitaire war game. Again, takes place during the first year of the war. Starting on the outside here, looking at the turn record track, the game takes place over up to 13 turns, starting June of 1950 into June of 1951. You are playing as the UNC forces, United Nations Command, along with the South Koreans. If you hold out to the very end, that's when you're going to check victory points and have a potential UNC victory. However, the only way for the game to end early is if the North has a sudden death victory, in which case the communists win and you lose the Korean War. That is if they are able to seize every city on the map, including Busan. Speaking of the map itself, you can see North and South Korea, the 38th parallel. The game itself, every place is point-to-point movement, and there are 4 tracks. They start up here in China, specifically the Manchurian province, and then they begin in North Korea. They are A, B, C, and D. Start in China, and they work their way down to Busan. The enemy forces, the communist forces, whether it is the North Koreans or the Chinese themselves, as they enter the war, will work their way south. Traditionally, if the right strategy happens and they are falling back, they will work their way back north. But generally speaking, they're pushing their way south towards the Busan perimeter and trying to capture Busan and force your UNC, United Nations Command forces, off the peninsula. Point-to-point movement, each location has a different terrain type, which is explained down in the terrain key in the bottom left of the map board itself. The map has a bunch of charts on it, so you're not having to leaf through the rulebook, at least not for all the various charts. Holding boxes for whether it's North Koreans, the Chinese forces, which the red Chinese, enter on their untried side, so you're not exactly sure what you're going to get. There's going to be some decoy units, some will be armor, some will be infantry. You never know what you get till you are occupying the same space and you're revealing them. You're keeping track of the communist anti-air, which starts as regular and does eventually flip over when the Soviets become involved in the air war and create, Meg Alley. You have communist logistics, communist strategy table, which that influences whether on a general offensive, limited offensive, they are standing fast or they're falling back. Red Chinese intervention, so it starts off, the Chinese, right, are not involved in the Korean War, at least not on a troop level. However, very quickly, the Chinese intervention chart will go up, and once it reaches intervene, and it will, they will start spawning in Manchuria, and they will start moving their way south. You keep track of your own logistics here. You spend logistics points on refitting units, helping yourself in combat, building task forces, replacing eliminated units, purchasing extra units, etc. You will conduct naval, air, and sea, naval, air, cargo, and then airstrike missions, as well as you have holding box for forces in Japan that will be, over time, deployed to the peninsula itself. Combat, although I'll describe it as we actually play, is going to take place generally over up to 2 impulses for each side. Communists get to go first, depending on their operational phase, depending on their strategy. They'll have a first impulse, a second impulse, and then the UNC will have a first and potentially second as well. I think that's it for basics on the kind of the map. You're going to see everything in action once we get to the playthrough. So let's go ahead and dive in. All right, starting off, it is turn 1, June 1950. First phase is the preparation phase. First segment, you're going to check for random events. Now, in the very first turn of the game, you do not roll for a random event. However, starting with turn 2, pre-Chinese intervention, you will roll on this chart right here. And after the Chinese intervene, you'll go ahead and roll on this chart right here. Second segment will be the communist logistics segment, which is where you are rolling for logistics point to add to the communist logistics track over here, excuse me. It goes from 1 collapse all the way up to 12 fanatic. It starts off at 11, and during the very first turn of the game, you do not roll to add to it. I believe it's a 1d6 to start pre-Chinese intervention, then afterward it'll be 1d6 plus additional. Third, you go to the communist reinforcement segment. This is where you will check the communist reinforcement table on the map, which is right here, and you're going to roll to check to deploy if any communist reinforcements. So we'll go ahead and roll. It is a 1d6 and pre-Chinese and post-Chinese intervention. A 2, that gives us 1 North Korean. So we go ahead and draw randomly up here. Kind of have them all mixed up here. Go ahead and just draw one. And placement traditionally is going to be Pyongyang. If Pyongyang is full, which you can have up to 3 mobile units, which mobile units are basically any of the units you see other than these. So the red and then the tan here, these are garrisons. You know, one side is North Korean, one side is South Korean. So all the cities have garrisons automatically if they are North Korean. You start off with garrisons in the South Korean cities. Later on, as the North Koreans take them over, and then when you eliminate them, you're taking back territory, or hopefully you are, you can rebuild them by spending your logistics points right here. So, okay, so again, we added the 1 North Korean unit here to Pyongyang. All right, so then you go to the communist activation segment. This is where you would make a strategy check. So you'd be rolling on the communist strategy table, depending on their logistics level, to see what actual communist strategy they would have for the turn. However, in the very first turn of the game, you don't roll because the communists are going to be on a general offensive, right? This is the beginning. North Koreans are crossing the border. They are moving south to attack the South Koreans. Now you have the UNC, United Nations Command's logistics segment. So we roll and add logistics point to our UNC logistics. Again, there's going to be a certain roll for pre-Chinese intervention and then one for post-Chinese intervention. So for pre, you just roll a 1d6 and you add 4. So star here is a 6, which is really nice. So we had plus 4, so we had a total of 10. So we're at 4, so we go up to 14 logistics points. Very nice. Okay, then we go to the UNC reinforcement segment. So this is where, if there are any reinforcements on the turn track, they would now be deployed. Be deployed to either Japan or to the various locations here on any of the seaports that you control. So you can see the little harbor symbol or the anchor symbol, right? So Busan, Kunsan, Incheon, etc. You get the idea. However, also, since there are none on the board here currently, what we are doing for game turn 1, and then you do it again in game turn 7, is a whole stack of these reinforcements. They have R1, and then there's much less of them that have R2. All these units that have R1 on them, you're actually going to be rolling for each of them and placing them on the turn record track. Very simple. You're rolling a 1d6 and you're placing them that many turns ahead. So say I happen to, and I'm going to run through all of these, which I'll do it off camera so you guys don't have to see me roll 500 times. But say this air unit, I'm going to go ahead and roll for him. A 3. He goes 3 ahead. So 1, 2, 3. He'll be placed in the 4 spot, which is September of 1950. Now, one thing I can do before I roll, I can go ahead and spend a logistics point, and that will actually, for each one I spend, will reduce the die roll by 1. So if I had spent 1, I could reduce that from a 3 to a 2. So instead of being placed at the 4, we place at the 3. And yes, that does mean if you spend 1, and then you only roll a 1, that'll actually be placed the same turn. So it'll actually be available as a reinforcement immediately. All these stacks of R1, which, by the way, this is a starting unit. I don't know why he's over there. And then this one, G1, over here, which I'll explain in a second. All of these R1s, I'm going to go ahead and roll for, spend some logistics points to get them moved up ahead, and we're going to go ahead and be placing them all up here on the turn record track. All right, so I have rolled for every one of the units in general reinforcements. You can see up here from starting next turn, there's a stack, even bigger stack, etc., kind of working its way down. When it comes to turn 7 here, I will roll again for the units over here that have R2. There's only a few of them. Then those would then be from turn 8 and onward. The other reinforcements you have are the general reserve. So basically there were troops that were kept in reserve, right? So for potential, war or action in Europe in particular, Middle East, obviously the UN, United States, its allies, they weren't sure what was going to happen. So they did keep troops in reserve. If you want to spend victory points, you can actually put them on the track to have as reinforcements for the future, which I'm going to do for 2 units. I'm going to pick a B-29 and then a tactical aircraft unit. Each one of these is going to cost, and the UNC General Reserve VP cost is right here. Each one of those is going to cost 1, so that's a total of -2 victory points. There's not a separate tracker, so what I like to do, they recommend just use a random one. So there's actually these atomic bomb. It says optional. There's no rules in the game. I assume maybe potential future rules, or if you want to have some house rules. But anyway, use the atomic bomb marker. The backside is this nice, fun mushroom cloud. I have to go ahead and put it on the 2 on the UNC Logistics Index, just to show that, hey, when it comes to the end of the game and I'm checking victory points, -2. So both of these, we'll go ahead and just roll for each of them, just like we would normal. So first one, a 6, which really sucks. It's a B-29. I wanted him sooner rather than later. And for the tactical aircraft, a 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Place him right there. Okay. So that is it for the reinforcements. So again, we scheduled out our reinforcements. We did purchase 2, and now we are done with the preparation phase. Now we go into the airstrike and naval power phase. All right, so now we are in the airstrike and naval power phase. This is where we are assigning our air and naval units to different missions. Missions such as air superiority, so combating the communist anti-aircraft; interdiction, so trying to lower communist logistics; close air support, where they will be helping during the actual combat on the map here. And you have air cargo missions, they can do airlift units, airborne assault to contested areas, airdrop supplies to help units make sure they have LOC, line of communication. That's how the supplies work in this game, which we'll explain more as we get into it. The naval missions, interdiction, right? Same thing with logistics, closer support, same thing with combat, only it's areas where there's fights during harbors. Transporting units, primarily from Japan to the Korean Peninsula, although it could be from space to space if you want. Amphibious assault, obviously to contested spaces. Of course, historically, Incheon, right? Behind the lines, MacArthur's pretty much his last great sort of military objective, military operation that he conducted before he was effectively done with the war. And you have aircraft, you have naval units. Now, there's numbers on both of them. Let's look at a naval unit and then a B-29 here. The naval unit, the left one is the number for interdiction. The right is the number for close support, so combat, naval gunfire. For aircraft, they have 3 numbers. First number, the top number is air superiority rating. Second number is interdiction, and the last one is for close air support. So B-29, obviously, good at air superiority, even better at interdiction. However, not quite so good. In fact, a 0 for close air support. All right, let's go ahead and let's assign these here. So they're coming out of the reserve. We can assign them as we want with the limitation, remember, that we only get 3 air units this turn. So let's put, for the first turn, so let's put B-29s. Let's put them in the interdiction box so they are combating logistics. That's what they're best at anyway. And we got 1 more unit. Let's place him and probably do air superiority. You think we got a chance to lower that a little bit? Let's do that. He only has a 1, but better than nothing. And for the Navy, let's do a naval transport, put him in the transport box, and naval gunfire, we'll put him in interdiction as well. Yep, I think that'll work for us. So once you've assigned them, then you go into the air superiority segment. So we'll do air superiority first, then we will do the air interdiction and naval interdiction segments. So interdiction here, interdiction there, and then we'll go into the operational phase. So if there was any close combat, close support, which I have not assigned any units for that, they would be conducted later during the operational phase with the ground units moving back and forth. As it is, let's go ahead and first off, air superiority. Now, the order of who goes first, the very beginning of the game, first half or so, is going to be the UNC gets to go first against the Communist AA. So we'll fire our air superiority first, then they will fire theirs. Later on, once the Soviets intervene and they bring in their MiG-15s, you flip the marker over, then they get the bounce. They get to go first. However, when that happens, we also do get to bring our Sabres in for free. We could have paid to do it sooner, but I'm going to go ahead and wait for those F-86s, get them later. Once the Soviets intervene, we get them right away, and they have a 3 for their superiority, so very helpful there. So, all right, so we get to go first. Very simple. Just check our air superiority total number, which is only 1. Again, right now we only get to have the 1 unit. We'll get more later, don't worry. And we have the air warfare table here on the map. So under combat strength is a 1, and you look down, roll our 1d6. S1 means how much damage is going to happen, right? Reduce it by that number. So we need a 5 or a 6. So 5 or 6, we can reduce the communist anti-aircraft. And we got a 5. Perfect. So, yep, 1. And then 5 is S1. So it's reduced by 1 down to 2. Now the communists do get to fire back. And they're at combat strength 2. And they rolled a 2, which is no effect, luckily for us. Now, if they were successful, we would have to take it away. We normally would get to pick whichever unit we wanted. However, before the Soviets and their jet fighters are involved, the MiG-15, they can't target the B-29. So any of those, propeller aircraft, we'd have to take it out of our tactical aircraft here. I believe that is a Navy Panther coming off a carrier, I believe. Anyway, someone correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not 100% sure on that one. Anyway, so we did our air superiority. Now we do any interdiction we have. So interdiction, we have our aircraft, then we have the naval. Let's do the naval first. He only has a 1. Remember, first number is interdiction, so we'll roll for that. And that is done under the air warfare table. So a 4, and he had a 1. No effect, unfortunately. And then we do interdiction from our B-29s, 3 and 3, so total of 6. So 6 combat strength. So we're going to cause at least 1 damage, or 1 negative. A 4, so it's 6, we go down to 4, that's S2. So we reduce the logistics by 2. Still high, but hey, we're chipping away at it a little bit here. Okay, so we did our interdiction, and we did our air superiority. Go ahead and move everyone back to the reserve here. The only one we'll leave is we'll leave the transport, because that'll occur during the UNC operational phase. We use our Navy to transport, again, from, primarily, usually from Japan to the peninsula, but possibly within the peninsula from port to port. Okay, that's it for the airstrike and naval power phase. Let's go into the operational phases, starting with the communist first. All right, communist operational phase. Now, it's going to be the first impulse, which we have a tracker up here. You would be checking the strategy to see what they do. However, first turn, remember, we didn't roll. It's automatically general offensive, right? They're on the offensive. That's not going to change, from what historically. You got to start the war somehow, right? So they're going to have 2 impulses. First impulse, there's going to be movement, which they are traditionally moving south towards Busan, right down the lines, as I've explained, and as you'll see in a second. Then there's going to be an attack segment, so basically we're going to have combat. Then there's going to be a second impulse for them. Any units that are in LOC, line of communication, aka supply, are going to move, and then regardless of whether they're in LOC or not, if they're occupying a space with a UNC unit, they're going to conduct another combat. So there's going to be 2 impulses here. The North Koreans, they're always in supply for the entire game turn for this first turn of the game, so they're not worried about the LOC. So it's just going to happen. There's going to be 2 movements and then 2 combats, as well as the North Koreans are going to have tactical superiority. It's part of combat. I'll explain in a second, but basically what that means is that they're going to get to fire first, fire all their units first, and then I get to respond. Normally, the tactical superiority would be, you'd be checking for any entrenched units, which then gives entrenched effect to the whole location. And then also the actual terrain effects chart tells you on here what type of terrain. So for instance, open terrain, which is the white circles, it's going to be UNC gets tactical superiority. Rough terrain, so the whatever shape that would be, the square on its side here would be for the communists, etc. Okay, communists first impulse. What you do, very simple. You start with A, then you go B, C, D, and you look at what's closest down to Busan. So from A, you'd work your way up, and say right here, okay, this unit right here, he is going to move in the first impulse. He moves, and then after all the movement's done, you'll then have your first combat, right? There is a movement allowance chart for the UNC, depending on whether it's winter or not, depending on whether Walker is still the 8th Army commander or if it's switched to Ridgway. For the communists, every turn, regardless of who your commander is, regardless of whether it's winter or not, they move 3. And it's not movement points, it's just they move 3 spaces until they encounter an enemy force. So, here at Haiju, this North Korean division of infantry, he's going to moves to Yonnan, and he stops. And we go ahead and check. Oh, here we had Sananju. There is a North Korean infantry. 1, 2, 3, and he stops. Now we'll check for B. Right here, he moves 1 and stops. Here we have 2 right here at Pyongyang. 1, 2, 3, and they stop. And they're all in Seoul right now. Check C. He moves 1 and then stops. And then D, he moves 1, stops. And up here, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that was movement of the first impulse. And now check for shared locations, which there are several, all along the front line, right? They've crossed the 30th parallel. We go ahead and have our first combat. So this would be the attack segment. Attack segment, first off, you would have, in a normal game turn, or a game turn if you had committed, you would have close air support. In the game turn 1 here, you can't have close air support during the communist operations. You can possibly otherwise, but during game turn 1, you cannot. So, and I also didn't pick any for later either, so there's not going to be any close air support. Okay, after that, you determine tactical superiority. Again, that's based on the terrain, but in game turn 1, communists get to go first. So now you go ahead to fire combat. Basically, you start off and the game tells you exactly how to do it. It starts off with the communists. They will be firing the highest number first, and then we get to assign hits as we want to our units. You can see there's a tactical fire table over here. Check combat strength, roll a 1d6, and if there's a D something, that is going to be a hit on us. So, starting off here, and just like with movement, you start with A, right? A line, and start with the highest number. So right here is going to be a combat. The next one will be here, then here, then here. All right, so starting off the combat here in Yonnan, 8-5. Go ahead and roll. He has a combat strength of 2, and it's every unit fires. So at 2, combat strength of 2, when we rolled a 2, there's no effect. Second unit there is a combat strength of 2. He rolled a 4, so 2, and he rolled a 4. That is D1. So he has a hit on this South Korean division. The South Korean division was already reduced anyway, so he is eliminated. Placed over here in the UNC General Reserve, eliminated units. No advance after combat or anything like that. The communists go ahead and secure the space. If they had not eliminated the UNC unit after the combat, they would have had to retreat back. Once combat is done, it's 1 round, then it'd be all done. Now, we would have got to fire back, which should happen probably over here, I'm guessing, over in Seoul, but we'll see. Okay, speaking of which, let's have a combat in Seoul. Again, the communists get to go first, so start off with the highest strength unit here with a 3 strength. He will roll a 5, so combat strength of 3, and he rolled a 5. D1, I get to assign as I want. I'll go ahead and assign to the garrison here. A 2, he rolled a 4. That's also D1, eliminated. And the last 2, 5. Oh, eliminated. So never mind. Seoul has been captured. So immediately, Seoul was captured. Well, not too far off from traditionally how it went down. Now, once they take a city here, they actually get, the communists get the garrison, and they get the communist garrison automatically. I'll place it right there. All right, now C, we have a combat right here. They only have a strength of 1, so we have a good chance of surviving. Unless they roll a 6, in which case we are eliminated here. Fantastic. And then finally over here as well with a strength of 3. They rolled a 3. which combat strength of 3 causes D1, so this eliminates him as well. Wow, the South Koreans were annihilated across the border. Pretty historically accurate, unfortunately. The thing is, and now when it comes to logistics for ours and theirs, if you eliminate full strength divisions that are UNC forces, so these are South Korean forces, right? This light tan. When it's the green, then it'll be, if it's a division eliminated, they will gain logistics. If we eliminate full strength Chinese armies, we gain logistics as well. So, and I believe they lose, or maybe they lose logistics. I'll double check the rules when we get to there, but we're not there right now. So, all right, so that was the first communist impulse. So now we go to the second communist impulse. Same thing as before. This, you would be checking for line of communication this time. However, they don't have to worry about that for this turn. Line of communication for the communists has to be traced 5 spaces to a city with a garrison for them. So, for instance, on A, it's 1, 2, so they're only 2 away. Seoul, they have a garrison here, so they're good. On C, they would be too far away. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4. There's no cities, nowhere along, all the way up to Manchuria. So he would not be in LOC. And then here he would be 1, 2. But for the first turn, it doesn't matter. Okay, so let's do add second impulse. Do movement on A. So each unit would move and stop here at Incheon. Here they're going to go ahead and move. 1, 2, 1, 2, and 1, 2. Here, 1, 2, 3. And here, 1, 2, 3. So he's right here, Ulsan, right outside Busan. Yikes. Definitely a scary proposition here. Okay, so now we have our combats, right? So right here is going to be combat. Go and roll. A 2, and you rolled a 2, no effect. And the second 2 strength. Roll a 2, no effect. All right, so we lost it in Incheon. So they were not able to defeat the garrison in Incheon, so they will retreat to Yonnan. So Incheon holds out for now. Now we have combat here in Daejeon. Starting off with the 3. You rolled a 1, so no effect. And by the way, the A1, that's only for airstrikes. If you have close air support, then that close air, the air unit would actually take a loss, but it doesn't apply during ground combat. All right, roll for a 2. We got a 3, and that is no effect. They need at least a 4, the last 2 unit, and they got a 4, so they do eliminate, which automatically converts it basically to a garrison. All right, in Daegu, it's going to be combat. They're 1 strength, a 5, 1 strength, 5. Oh, that eliminates them. It then converts over to unbelievable. All right, and then, oh, and I did forget movement here, didn't I? Right, because he started up here, 1, 2, 3. Yep, so he would go 1, 2, 3. Sorry about that. I don't want to forget that. And no combat here because there's no defending units. Okay, that is it for the communist first and second impulses. So now you go into the UNC player. We get our first impulse, just like movement tag, just like normal. Second impulse would be any units that have LOC to a headquarters or an air supply, they would get to go. So first off, looking at the map here, this is looking pretty rough, let me tell you. So we have 1 naval transport. Let's go ahead and get him moving. So what he can do, he can go to Japan and pick up a unit. Now, unfortunately, in the first turn of the game, all you can send is Task Force Smith. Just like historically, they were the first, right? The U.S. sent them thinking, hey, this is going to stop the communists. It did not, but that's all we got for now. So they have 0 combat strength to do fire on the 0, which does potentially can cause damage. It's just, not a great chance of it. Okay, so we'll go ahead and send them over, send them to Busan to go ahead and unload them here. And the naval transport will go back to the reserves. All right, for movement other than that, literally all we have is 1 South Korean unit. We have no other units to move. The rest of these are garrisons. We're not going to worry about them. We are going to go ahead, let's see, and yeah, so no movement. The naval unit can't move. Once he's dropped off, that's it. And yeah, we're not going to do anything else. So we go to our second segment, and We're not going to conduct any movement or attacks, anything like that. We're holding tight. We're just trying to hold Busan until we can get some of these reinforcements coming into the country and start pushing back the communists. All right, now we go into the refit phase. So this is where any air and naval units that are still around, still in the map, you haven't used anything yet, you go ahead and put them back in the reserve. I moved them to the reserve right after I do each of their missions. It just makes it easier for me to remember. Then we do the UNC refit segment. So this is where you can refit reduced UNC units by expending logistics points. You can build entrenchments, you can build task forces, you can replace eliminated units by expending logistics points, purchase units from the UNC General Reserve. If you want to purchase, you decide, you know what, I do want to purchase some by paying the VP cost. And you can set up amphibious or airborne landing zones. So for us, we obviously want to start refitting. We want to beef up our strength. First off, we'll spend one logistics point to build an entrenchment. Now there are entrenchment markers here. I'm just going to do these green discs because technically there's only 4 counters for entrenchments. You can have as many as each space you have. If you have the logistics point to pay, you're not limited by the counters. So let's go ahead and place one of these here. This just shows that now every unit in Busan is considered entrenched, which will help us a lot next turn. And looking at the map, we're going to need it. Okay. Secondly, let's go ahead and rebuild this South Korean infantry division here, which the refit phase, the costs are listed over here. Refit a reduced ground unit, any size, costs 1 logistics point, so drop that to 6, and we'll rebuild him, which gets him up to strength 3. And then let's go ahead and, where are we at here? Yep. Let's rebuild, because we're going to be able to get, I think a naval transport over there. So we're going to be able to get a couple units moved from Japan over to South Korea. So let's go ahead and spend 1, 2. Let's do rebuild the first cav here, and then the headquarters. Let's do both of those. And what do we got? What do we got for logistics? 4 points left, excuse me. Trying to think here, just want to make sure we got should we get more units up there, but we're only gonna have, we have 1 naval transport, and I think we got 1 coming up here next turn. Yeah, and then the turn after that we get another one. So we only have 1 next turn, so we'll be able to move 2 divisions from Japan to the peninsula, which that will thankfully happen. Oh no, that won't happen till after, will it? Oh boy. Well, good luck to us here. But okay, I think that'll be it. We'll save our last 4 logistics points because we can actually use them when we conduct combat to help us. You can actually spend logistics points to shift your combat strength one column higher. Okay, I think that's it for any UNC refit segment, spending our logistics points. Yep, let's save our last 4. Now we'll go to the communist refit segment. If the communist strategy was fall back or stand fast, they would potentially check for refit of eliminated units and refit of units on the map here. However, it's general offensive, so they're not going to do that. So now we go to the final phase, which is you check for victory, which would be the communists have fulfilled the conditions of a sudden death victory, which is they control every city on the map. They've captured Busan, they've captured everywhere, and we have not captured any landing spot back by then. If that happens, communists win the sudden death victory, and UN loses the Korean War. Otherwise, if that didn't happen, which it has not happened, we still are holding out, barely. We have turn advance segment, so this goes to turn 2. If it was the very last turn, then you would check for victory points, which is basically adding up control of the different cities, ports, certain key cities like Seoul, Pyongyang, and then checking and taking away any victory points you may have spent for general reserve troops, and comparing it to in the chart in the book to see, is it a UNC decisive victory, tactical victory, Is it a stalemate, or did the communists kind of win in that sense? But that's it for game turn 1. So we're going to go on to game turn 2, which will be July of 1950. I'm going to end this video here. This first turn's kind of tutorial video. Obviously, there's still a lot left in the game, a ton left in the game, a lot of back and forth coming up. I will have more videos covering that. But for now, this will give you guys a good overview of how this game works and at least get a hint of the flavor of it. First turn, a little different. You know, it's very one-sided, but at the same time, you got to see some of it in action. So if you want to see more, don't worry. I'll have at least one more video coming with additional turns. Go ahead and watch that. Otherwise, you made it this far. Always appreciate a subscription. It's free. Just click the little button. Appreciate a thumbs up in the video. And as always, comment, let me know your thoughts on the game and in my videos. So, all right, until next video. Until next time, everybody. Later.